Welcome to the show. It's deep with the twist. We're laughing through the scriptures where humor coexists. Cultural, come on and take a seat. It's faithful and it's fun wherever it meets feet. Dive into the stories. Hear the podcast call. It's Mormon stuff with a smile in the cultural hall.
It is time for another episode of the Cultural Hall. It is an Articles of News episode co-hosted with, are you an Esquire yet?
Yeah.
Is that a legal thing?
Esquire, JD, counselor at law, attorney at law.
It's Chow from Texas. That's what I like to call her.
Yep.
And that's her name. It's not like a French saying goodbye. It's just Chow.
Yep.
We've talked about Chow from Charmaine before, but I don't remember.
Fourth grade.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Kristen. Gosh, I'm spacing on her last name. She was in my ward.
Mm-hmm.
But she came up with the nickname Chow Mein Noodles. And it just stuck, and it's shortened to Chow, and it's stuck ever since.
I actually would like to call you Chow Mein Noodles from now on. I may do that instead.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a little longer, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, my friend Chow Mein Noodles? Sure.
Yeah.
Down in Texas, you guys have had a fun experience over the last little bit. It's been a minute since we've talked. Her husband, Russ, he did some news with us a while back. But you guys have had, like, snow, which you never have. And then you've had, like, hey, it's the middle of summer in the middle of winter.
Yeah, well, for us, it's spring, but 80 degrees. Yes, we've had 80-degree days. And then we're still in that right now. We think it'll track. We think we are into spring. So.
But you guys got snow, which you don't normally get snow,
did.
right? Like snow had to shovel kind of snow.
You could have shoveled it. I just looked at it and watched it melt at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My kids played in it.
Sure.
And then there was one day last week where there was like on the line of, do we cancel school? Do we not? They didn't cancel school. And I was driving to school and there were snowflakes falling, and it didn't stick. It got warmer.
Sure.
But it was still kind of weird to drive my kids to school in the snow because I'd never done that before here in Texas.
But global warming, not a thing, guys. It's a weather phenomenon. There's no proof. Nothing's changing.
It's just a very long El Nino. That's what I hear.
Yes.
It's very long.
I'm going to call this episode a very long El Nino. I just got to write that down. Let me find a pin, a very long El Nino. So what's new? What's new from Texas? Anything exciting? Anything fun? Anything not fun?
Well, I will say today is Texas Independence Day.
Yeah.
Pour one out for Davy Crockett and Sam Houston and everybody at the Alamo.
Does Sam Houston have a song like Davy Crockett does?
I don't think so, but he has a statue that kind of looks like Joseph Smith. The first time I saw it, I thought it was Joseph Smith. It's in the middle of nowhere. I think it's kind of by Washington on the Brazos. And it's just like this 300-foot tall statue that looks like Joseph Smith or Brigham Young or somebody standing there with a cane. But it's Sam Houston. So yeah.
Well, you don't get the phrase like what in Sam Houston. That's something that people would say. But you don't get what in the Brigham Young doesn't flow the same way.
No,
what in Sam Houston. So.
And I will say yesterday I was at a dance competition in Fredericksburg, Texas, which is the final resting place of our friend Lyman White and his people that wouldn't go to Utah like Brigham Young wanted. So I was thinking about Lyman White yesterday, and I just thought, I wonder if he knew that, a couple hundred years later, church members are still walking around the little town he saved.
Yeah.
He taught them how to they didn't know how to do a mill or do anything. And so he taught them how to do that and basically saved the town from starvation. So,
and it's called Fredericksburg, not Lymanville or Whiteville or something like that.
Fredericksburg, his little group, they had a group, their little settlement was called Zodiac. So, yeah.
Is there a Zodiac, Texas?
It's on private property. You can't go visit his grave. It's on private property as of right now. Some church billionaire, please buy it and make it a church site where we can go have girls camp or something.
You really want to have that epic girls camp at the grave site of Lyman White? Yeah. Gather round, girls. Let us tell a story of Lyman White.
So he wouldn't go back to Utah. and Brigham Young excommunicated him for it. But he's still a good person.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's how
Everyone's a good person, everyone.
I know.
Everyone. We're all fine.
In the long run, he's ours.
He is like a chewed piece of gum, everyone. Was talking about that the other day. All the different terrible examples of how we used to
Yes.
teach chastity. The
Yep.
spot on the tell me if I'm hitting all the big ones for you. The chewed gum, right?
Yep.
The like the ink on the wedding dress or some sort of dirt on a wedding dress or something
Yep.
like that. Some element of baked good, where you know the one of the elements is either not in the recipe or like
There's a
who,
gross
yeah,
element in
yeah, there's
there.
a gross
Yep.
element in the recipe there. Let me think if there was any other.
Muddy shoes in the temple.
Yeah.
That was one we
Ooh,
got a
that's a good
lot.
one. That's a
Like
good
walking into the
one.
temple with muddy shoes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep. All those things.
We've evolved. Have we? Have we
I don't
evolved?
know. A little bit. I'm loving all the videos I'm seeing on Instagram of the new garment top, and I'm fascinated on how this is going to roll out at church, and
Hmm.
like the women showing up and like, hey, well, no, I'm good, but this is also my shoulder, but I'm also keeping my covenants and wearing my garment top.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
hope that we don't police other one another's underwear, though I know we
yes,
will. I know we will.
yes, we will. We'll wonder about it. I've never wondered about anybody's underwear, but somebody will wonder about my underwear when I show
Sure.
up.
I can see your shoulders, your porn shoulders. How are people supposed to be able to focus?
They're pretty significant shoulders. I do go to the gym.
Eh,
So,
eh, Sun's out, guns out. It is an interesting thing. The thing that for me that I've thought about, I've joked around about. I don't know that I'll really do it, but I do find that it would be comfortable. You have the slips for the women.
hmm.
I'd love to. I'd love to sleep in a slip for a woman
Yeah.
and be wearing my garments because you know what is not comfortable? Any fabric between my legs when I sleep.
Oh, no, I'm the same way. Because
Yep,
if somebody is sneaking into my house, I gotta run out and I can't be twisted up in that stuff. I'm gonna get all trapped. I know it's unrealistic, but
sure.
this is number one priority as I go to sleep. It's like, okay, you got to be able to get out of the bed and run.
That's
And
right. That's right. Naked doesn't matter. I need to be able to
yeah,
run. Yeah.
just haul butt out of there.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened
Literal.
yet, but it may happen someday,
Yeah.
and
I
I'm
hope not.
prepared.
I hope
Yeah,
not.
I
I
lock
feel
my
like there wouldn't be break-ins in Texas because everyone has 10 guns that people are
true.
like, we don't break in Texas. It's just not a thing we do.
Yep. And well, yeah, it could be somebody you know,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That's always the thing. But yeah, it's probably very unlikely. We're out in the country. It's hard to get to our house. I don't know that you've been to this
I
house
have
that we've
not been
been
to that house, but I need you to knock on wood right now because otherwise you are jinxing yourself to have someone come to your house out in the. We watch all the murder shows. It's always the house in the country. It's
in. Yeah.
also, they wondered what was wrong with the people at the, it's a welfare check gone wrong.
You know, when we first moved here, I'm not proud to share this story, but some
Oh,
Jehovah Witnesses showed up
okay.
and I didn't know who they were. And my driveway's like 150 feet long,
So
right?
they
It's
were
not big.
committed.
Yeah, I think they had visited the people here before,
Ah,
but I came out hot with a weapon in hand, ready because I didn't know. And my husband was gone. I was pregnant. I had my daughter was like 2.5, and I didn't know who was coming up my driveway so
mhm.
brazenly without texting me first. And they have not been back. So I'm
That
sorry
is one way. That is one
ish
way
to
to.
them. Yeah.
Now, weapon in hand like a gun?
A gun. It was a handgun. Yep.
Shut up. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It was
Way
ready.
overkill. It's so much.
Oh,
It's overkill, but
yeah.
wow.
But I didn't know. Like I didn't know. I was like, who do I know that owns that car? Nobody. And I mean, it's a long drive up, right? So I had
Hmm.
plenty of time to be like, I don't know that car. There's more than one person in that car. I don't know who they are. Let me grab this and go out on my front porch. I never pointed it at anybody. I kept the firearm by my side
Sure.
and
Responsible owners.
just
Yep.
talked to them
Hmm.
and just very much, you need to get in your car and go back. And they tried to explain who they were. And I said, I understand. I don't know who you are. You don't belong here in my house. Get in your car, get out.
Wow.
And they did. So,
Nice. Have you
yep.
had to brandish? I love being able to use that word in this podcast or this show that I didn't know I was going to be able to today. Have you been able to brandish your firearm in any other such instances?
There was one other instance.
Okay.
And
Share. Sharing is caring.
hey,
Let's hear it.
so a member of the ward, shout out to Alex, who now lives in Virginia. I don't
Okay.
think maybe he listens. I think his wife listens. But he had texted Russ to say, "Hey, can I borrow an axe
Russ
from
is
you?"
the husband, in case people
Yes,
didn't make that connection.
yes, my husband. "Hey, can I borrow an axe?" And my husband said, "Yeah, it's in the barn. Go ahead and just, come get it from the barn." So I'm in the house and I see out the window, and all I can see is there's some guy walking over towards my barn,
Sure.
right in front of my house. I
Right.
had no idea who it was. So for good measure, I got both the handgun and a kitchen knife. I don't, again, this one I didn't have as much time to think about it, but
Sure.
I
You
was
grab
just
all
like,
weapons possible. Yes.
yes. And then I came out on the front porch and I was kind of like hiding and trying to look to see where they were. And
Hmm.
he came walking, but I wasn't looking at him because I was trying to hide. But all of a sudden he said, "Chow, is that you?" And I'm like, "Alex?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm here to borrow an axe. I texted your husband. I
Uh,
guess he didn't let you know." And I was like, "Oh,"
oh,
and he's like,
good.
"Is that a kitchen knife? Is that a gun?" And I was like, "Listen, I was ready. I
Yeah.
didn't know what we were gonna do out here. So you had an axe. I brought some weapons, but
Here's the
no.
deal. I am learning that if I am ever to come visit you, be sure to call or text first.
Yes.
Do not
Please do.
surprise
Yes.
the Wild family. That is not a thing. You do not
Well,
surprise the Wilds.
we have a gate now too. So
Oh,
you're going to be stopped at the gate.
okay.
So unless you're
Okay.
Amazon, but Amazon lets me know when they're 10 stops away and
Sure.
5 stops away. So I know they're coming, but yeah, we have a gate. So
Well, I'm glad that the family friend wasn't able to get the axe before he said, "Chow, is that you?" Because that would be a whole different scenario.
yes. Yep.
He's
Yeah,
got
and
an
obviously I
axe.
don't think I was hiding very well, or maybe I was pregnant that time too.
Hmm.
So it's like, pretty obvious where you were, but we laugh about it. And so
You're
yeah.
hiding behind, but the belly is poked around the corner, and he's like, "Chow, chow."
What are you doing over there? You trying to
Is
be
that
sneaky?
Garth in utero? Is that
Yes.
who that is? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Fun. Well, okay. Yeah, I will not be visiting you guys unless I get written express
Text
permission,
first.
and we'll give you the exact instant
Yep.
that I
Text
will be here,
first.
be there.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, well, that's fun.
Yes.
That is certainly things that are going
Happy
on. Uh,
Happy Texas Independence Day. That's more of
uh,
that story.
Something fun to share. I've worked.
Yeah,
That's all
what did you
I've
up to?
done. It seems like I've
Oh,
done for the last few weekends. I work with a ski resort and they do a thing called a tap takeover. So different breweries come in and I'm getting people to sign up to win free things. And so I have the opportunity to make jokes with people and play music really loud and all sorts of things like that. So for several hours, more hours than you should in a day, I have DJ'd for the last several weekends.
and I noticed, I think it was yesterday, you were looking for suggestions for yacht rock.
Yeah.
And
You like a yacht rock?
I don't know what that means. I've had people send me yacht rock videos. I know it's a Sirius XM station.
Sure.
I don't know what it is.
So it's like it's like a classification of music, I guess I would say.
Hmm.
Like blues is a classification of music, or like hip hop, I guess. Yacht
Yeah.
rock is like Christopher Cross, Michael McDonald,
Okay.
Hall and
Okay.
Oates. A
Okay.
case could be made for Steely Dan, although they're technically jazz rock, but whatever. Like you could make a case for a lot of bands to be kind of that yacht rock feel. It's something I don't
Okay.
know where it actually came from. It's just come on the scene in the last couple of years. But yeah, yacht rock station. Just imagine like you're on a boat and you want a really good song. You can sing along to it a little bit, but also you don't have to, and you can
Mm,
just enjoy the music. Yacht rock.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think I better get a yacht to really
Yes.
understand the yacht rocking that occurs in this world.
Yeah, or
So,
get a rock and paint it like a yacht, because that's
yachts.
the
Yep.
closest I'll ever get.
Woo, look at my yacht
Yeah.
rock.
Listening to Michael McDonald as I play with my rock. Mom, are you playing with rocks? I've got a gun and I'm
Yes.
not afraid to use it.
Don't bug
Children.
her. Just let her be.
We've got some pretty serious news that we'll get to
Yep.
tonight. And well, in her day life, she is an attorney
Mhm.
at large. I don't know. What's an attorney at large? Is that you can be with wherever? Is that a phrase even?
No, I don't think it is. I'm just an attorney. I'm at a private law firm
Uh-huh.
and
Deal with criminals?
a
Money? What do
little
you deal
bit.
with?
I do juveniles. I do some criminal cases. I'm kind of selective.
Hmm.
And then I do a lot of probate and litigation with probate. I do guardianship law.
If people don't know what probate is, they're just nodding their head right now. What would that be?
Yeah. So it's that Taylor Swift song. They think I left them in the will.
Hmm.
They read it out and laugh. She's laughing up at us from hell.
Hmm.
Heck,
Hmm.
sorry.
You can say hell. It's in the
So,
Bible. It's okay.
oh
That's a
yeah.
swear word. That's okay. T less she'll swear.
So basically, people's, they die and they have a written direction for their estate. And I'm the attorney who takes that to the court, and the judge says this is a legal document. They were not under duress. There was no force in this. And you can now transfer all of their assets to the beneficiaries or give it to this charity or handle it whatever which way.
So are you the attorney that gets to be the heartbreaker in the room that's like, Jared, your
Yeah,
mother wants you to rot in hell. You'll never
yeah.
get sorry about that. And Jamie, you get all of the money.
You get
That's you?
everything. Huh, yes, but I've only had like one client do that.
Uh-huh.
And I'm in Texas and I had a really interesting one. I was just looking at it today because we had fast and testimony meeting and I thought I might go up and share my testimony.
About
And
probate? I love this. Keep
a
going.
little bit, yeah. So it was probably a couple months ago, I had a guy bring me his brother's attorney because he wanted to know what he inherited or what he could do if the kids were, some of them had passed away or whatnot.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I'm reading through the guy's will, so I actually looked it back up again and I screenshot it so that I could, if I were to go up and bear my testimony, I wanted to share this with everybody. But the guy leaves a bunch of bequests, to my son this, to my brother this, on and on. And then it says, and finally, to all my family, the personal testimony that God lives, that Jesus Christ is our Savior and Redeemer, that Joseph Smith is a true prophet of God, that the Book of Mormon is, as well as the Bible, is the true word of God, and that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the one and only true correct church on the earth. Please hear this message, open your hearts, and receive it, and abide by the teachings of the Spirit of truth.
I like it.
I know. I was like, well, I don't know do I send this in a letter to everybody?
Hmm.
Like, how do
Hmm.
I make sure they receive this,
Hmm.
But he had joined the church. I asked the brother about it and he said, oh yeah, he joined that church in the last 10 years of his life. He was a temple worker, I think in Georgia or somewhere on the East Coast. And so, yeah, he had included that in his will.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Let me ask you this about that, and then I promise everyone we're going to get to news. One of the things that I have, so my parents, starting to get a little bit older, but both still with us. You
yeah,
lost your dad relatively recently, right? Last,
2020. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Uh, I am encouraging my parents to have their will made known to all of us kids before
Yeah.
they pass.
Yeah.
One of my parents refuses to do a will because she thinks that it's going to be that then she dies. Like you make the will and then you die, like cause and
Hmm.
effect, whatever. And then
Yep.
the other one, I think that he is he's a little bit afraid that he's going to make a lot of people mad and he just doesn't want to deal with it. So he's going to die, still make everybody mad, but he won't have to deal with it because he'll be dead. And for me, I've gone through all the process. I've lined it out, the medical, the who's going to
Hmm.
be my care of this and blah 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 blah.
Good.
I just haven't finished it with the attorney yet.
Yeah. Sign it because
Yep.
otherwise it doesn't count.
I know it doesn't count, right? It's
Yeah.
it's essentially worthless at this point. But at the point that it's done, I'm gonna have a here's my will party,
Yeah.
invite all of my family over and be like, I know this is weird. I just need everybody to know if I die, this is gonna go to her, and this is what I'm doing for you guys, and
Yeah.
I'm dead and I'm out, just so you all know. But I think that's a rarity. I don't think most people do that kind of thing.
They don't all the time, but they do at least let the executor know where the will is.
Sure.
And honestly, it's a gift to give that to your family. So, because the hardest cases I have are the people who come in and we have to do what's called an heirship proceeding, HEIR,
Hmm.
where the court legally declares who inherits the estate.
Hmm.
And that there's so many questions. I mean, it's such a gift to give your kids this last little piece that just says, "Hey, I've taken care of it. I'm making this as easy for you as possible."
Right.
You don't draft your will for you, you draft it for the next generation so that they can focus on grieving instead of dealing with me. Like that nobody wants to be constantly dealing with Charmaine Wild whenever their mom has died. And it makes
Right.
my job a little bit easier because then I'm not doing grief counseling
Hmm.
as well as my job, but that sometimes happens, right? I
Sure.
end up talking with people about the grief process and how they move forward. But I really try to get the legal stuff done so they can focus on the family.
Hmm.
But tell your parents, give your children this gift. And if they don't want to tell everybody what it is, they don't have to.
Sure.
You're adults in your family. People should respect that and just be like, well, whatever, it's their stuff anyways. None of it is
Sure.
mine. I have no right to it. And but at least clean it up so it's not hard. So it's not,
People get weird at death.
yeah.
My dad always wanted me to have his
Oh, yeah.
1993 Honda Accord. Well,
Yep.
in the will, it says that he's giving it to your sister. I
Yep.
hate my sister. How dare you? It's like, it's just
Yeah.
such a mess. Not that I have anything
Where
that anyone cares about.
Yeah, where is the 1963 train set that went around the Christmas tree? Well, we don't know. We
Yep.
probably went to, the DI or Goodwill,
Right.
but they're like, no, I know they have it. I want to search their house. I know
Yep.
my brother's got it in there. And I'm like, you're not the police. You don't
Yeah.
get to go searching the house for a train. So, anyways, it is weird, but you get through it. So draft your will, get it done, and just live your life. Enjoy
Other,
it.
otherwise, it's a wait for it train wreck.
Yes.
Ooh. All right, let's take a break. When we come back in the second half, we'll do actual articles of news. BestDJinUtah.com is the website. That is where you go if you would like me to come and DJ your event. Now, will I do a family reunion where you all wear the same t-shirts? You bet I will. Will I travel to wherever you're at? Uh-huh. Am I reasonable as far as what I cost? Yes. Yes. Do I bring a good time? Yeah, all the things. Listen, Best DJ in Utah, it's my company. It's a thing I do that allows me to be able to have the time to do the cultural hall. So if someone's getting married, you think, man, they need a great DJ. You're throwing a party, whether it's a 50th or 60th or 40th or 20th or whatever the party is. I've done them all and would love to be able to do that. An anniversary party, certainly done those. I did a baptism in 2023. Yeah, we did a big dance party at a baptism. Spoiler, not a Mormon baptism, but it was fun nonetheless. BestDJinUtah.com is a website. I will get back to you within 24 hours with a quote. Come on now. BestDJinUtah.com. Here in the second half of our articles of news, we do actual articles of news. Hit it, Peter.
You can't lose articles of news.
And away we go, talking about the latest, and some of them are a little bit older, or like there's more development on the particular stories. We're going to start heavy right from the very beginning. So if you have young ears listening to this, we are talking about the
Earmuffs.
Arizona abuse. I wouldn't even say earmuffs. I'd say pause and say,
Yes.
hey, we're going to listen to Radio Disney equivalent music for a little bit, and
Yep.
mom and dad are going to enjoy this podcast show
Later.
in a different time. Now explain this to me, as if I was very ignorant, because I am. The three judge panel. What legally is going on now for this sex abuse case, and what does it mean, and then where does it go from here?
So there was obviously a civil lawsuit filed against the church in Texas. That goes in at the trial court level. And then there appears to have been a pretrial ruling regarding the church's exemption under clergy pertinent privilege in Arizona. And that made it so the case either went away or it was minimized or
Mhm.
something made that change. When a trial court makes a ruling, you can appeal and say, hey, I think somebody needs to review the decision of this judge.
Okay.
And you go to a higher court, that's the appeals court. So it's normally a panel of judges. I think a lot of courts there's five, and then sometimes they divvy up the cases between three of them and they kind of look at it together and they issue a ruling and kind of tell the trial court, you got it right, you did great, or you got it wrong, this case should go forward. And it appears that this appellate court said they're not exempt from liability under the clergy pertinent privilege information law in Arizona, and the case can go forward against the church.
And so
For
this is civil because this guy's already in
Yes.
jail, as I understand
Yep.
it. So this is whether or not these two, and this is that story, if you remember from a couple of years ago. Paul Adams is the guy's name. Super young, terribly young like infant child. It's
Uh,
just a
6 years
horrible
old, but
story.
yes. Yeah.
What's it? 6? Is that what you said?
Yep.
But I
Six
think
years.
it started even earlier than that. I may be incorrect on that, but it is
Okay.
a young, very, I mean, 6 is very young, but I think it is
Oh,
like very, very, very young child and went on for years and years with the knowledge of a couple ecclesiastical leaders
yeah. Mhm.
that this was occurring.
Who I believe also had medical. They were in the medical world, yeah, as well. They served as the family physician. So they had a like religious relationship, but they also were treating the kids as like a family doctor. So
And so now, because the lower court said not liable, but now this panel has said liable, so now is there a court case and we're gonna hear this all out, or how does it go? What happens now?
So if the appellate court rules against you, you can take it to the next level. So
Okay.
potentially the church could appeal the appellate court and go to the Arizona Supreme Court.
Okay.
Uh, and that normally is it. That's your last line of appeal, unless it relates somehow to the Constitution. Then you can take it to the federal level. So, but typically, this is going to be it for your case in a state court. So, I don't know. This story doesn't say the church is appealing the decision
Hmm.
or if they're just going to go fight it out in the trial court. People do a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of decisions that can be made. They can also, the lawyers for the church are probably looking at, hey, this is how the Supreme Court of Arizona has ruled in other cases regarding the clergy pertinent privilege.
Hmm.
So we're not likely to be successful, or they may say, hey, we're going to try it because there's a chance that it may actually go in your favor. Because sometimes the Supreme Court will overturn the appellate court.
Sure.
They know the trial court got it right. So it there's potentially one more chain, or it could go back down to the trial court. And there's a bit of a evaluation, a legal evaluation that I'm sure the lawyers are giving for the church on their likelihood of success if they go forward at the Supreme Court.
And just one question about that. So say that the church is like, yeah, you know what, we it was right before, and we stand by where we're at. This clergy pertinent or clergy client privilege. Uh, if they appeal it and it's being heard by the Arizona Supreme Court, and then they're like, oh, we are losing this in a big way, can they still be like, let's make a deal? Or once they've engaged in the court process, does it have to see it through for the court to rule? And then they're subject to whatever the court rules.
No, you can always make a deal. I mean,
Okay.
you can make a deal after the case has started and you're in trial and you
Mhm.
realize this isn't going well. So making a deal as long as it is, and even after there's a verdict, you could make a deal to say we agree to the settlement aside of the verdict.
Hmm.
So, because after there's a verdict or there's a order from the court, a final decision, that can be appealed. You got to make sure the trial court did the whole process correctly. And so sometimes you see deals at that point where they throw out whatever the verdict judgment was, and they have this non-disclosed settlement agreement that then nobody knows what happened.
Right.
I will say on this story, they say that the clergy pertinent privilege does not exempt the church because the bishop invited the man's wife the next day into his office and said, you got to tell your wife what you've been doing to your kids.
Hmm.
And then the bishop told the wife, you got to report this to the police. And so the court is saying that because you could have had this clergy pertinent privilege, bishop, if you had only ever talked to him, but because you opened the door and invited the wife into this discussion and directed her to talk to police, you no longer get that exemption. So I think maybe bigger than this case, I think that is if this stands, a difficult fallout in this situation.
Hmm.
Is the advice to bishops now going to be, well, don't invite their wife in?
Oh,
Don't,
geez.
their wife shouldn't know what's going on. That's just between the two of you. Otherwise, you open the door and you lose your exemption. Or will there be a change in church policy that says, look, husband and wife, that is the most important relationship that we place in this church.
Hmm.
You always got to let the other partner know what's going on. And run with opening that door. I don't know what's going to happen, but that's kind of the bigger picture fallout
Hmm.
of this ruling is how is the church going to handle other cases like this where you said, hey, you can tell his wife, and so he did. In the future, is it going to be don't tell your wife or don't invite
Jeez.
his wife in? I don't know. So it's tough.
I don't like that. I don't
I
like
don't like it either. I
yeah.
don't either. So yeah, that's hard.
I yeah, I'll be interested to see. It would seem to me, maybe I'm making this too simple, that it's like 1 point for the clergy client privilege and then one against it. And so it seems like to me that the natural thing would be like best of three, let's take it to the Supreme Court. I guess that's how I sort of
Yeah.
look at it. Like, yeah, you think so? Yeah, well, we think so too. All right,
Mhm.
let's let one more weigh in on this whole thing.
Yeah, and I've had cases where I've said to my client, "Hey, I don't think you're going to get success the next level up." And they said, "Well, I want to try. I just want to see what happens." And
Yeah.
so we do. We go up to the Supreme Court of Texas, we see what happens, and more often than not, it's right. It doesn't go our way, but they say, "Well, at least now I know. At
Yeah.
least I tried." So,
Um, I want to talk about this a little bit. It seems that there have been, and unfortunately, it's behind a paywall. I'm not sure if you have a better story, better version of this story, but in San Diego, about 91.
mm,
Um, let me, this is the little snippet that I can get. Five
yeah,
San Diego County plaintiffs are among at least 91 who recently alleged childhood sexual abuse by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then, of course, the San Diego Union Tribune cuts it off or says, hey, pay for this
pay for this.
article.
Yep.
Uh,
I got the same paywall.
is it similar, or I guess, is there ever a case within the legal system? And I appreciate you representing the legal system this evening. Is there ever a case where, like, it happens in Arizona and then it happens in San Diego and then it happens in Oregon? That was another case recently. And then there's another one that's happened in Utah, several, I'm sure. Is there ever a case where like federal folks can be like, guys, it's literally so many places. Let's
Hmm.
do it all together, or
Federal.
or
Yeah.
like it's a bigger deal because it's clearly not just isolated in these places. We need to, is that a thing, or will it always be that there will be these different plaintiffs, different organizations, different places saying here, yes, here, not there, yes, here.
It can be if you can establish the similar course of conduct in multiple jurisdictions.
Hmm.
I think that's a potential issue that can come up, and we're probably building to that, right?
Yeah.
Um, I know in Texas, I haven't heard the cases officially filed, but in attorney circles, I know there are attorneys who are gathering plaintiffs for such a case against church misconduct within Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that I believe that there is probably multiple attorneys that are going to come together on this. And the best way to think of it is like when you see um, lawsuits against a drug company
Mm-hmm.
or failing to disclose information, it kind of gets to a point. There's a threshold you have to meet where it becomes a class action lawsuit. And I think we may be heading that way because it does appear to be pretty widespread
Mm-hmm.
uh, throughout the United States. So, um, if that scares you as a listener, I will say that Pennsylvania, because of what happened with this Sandusky, and I wish they held the Pennsylvania standards throughout the United States because of Sandusky and what he did with youth. You have to have a criminal background check to serve with youth, even in our church in the state of Pennsylvania. It's state law. And so I would hope that something like that would come out of it, or there would be better training about preventing abuse
Sure.
and
But I
reporting.
watched a 30-minute video kind of on my computer and then clicked I agree at the end.
Yep. Yeah. No, that doesn't stop it.
Sure.
So
Well, but there's lots of people that don't have anything on their record that if you did a background check, it's only certain things that would show up. I mean, those are a lot of the things that people will say.
I agree, but I think too, when you are an abuser and you're seeking out a system that will not find you, not track you, our church is great at being that system that will say, well, he wore a white shirt and tie to church. You know what I mean? We
Hmm.
we tend to breed a culture where the appearance of good is good enough.
Hmm.
And we need to do better to say if you're not good in your core, it's not good enough no matter how good you look on the outside.
Yeah.
So,
Ugh.
yeah.
Ugh.
Yep. Hard stuff.
Well, so if we can get to access to an article in the future about the things going on in San Diego, but sounds like we may be talking about it for Texas in the
Yeah.
future, or who knows where else.
Yeah.
Um, I will say that what is it called? The podcast out of New Zealand, Heaven's Helpline, is a fascinating listen. It's a 5 or 6 episode podcast, small podcast about the church and abuse in New Zealand, and it is a fascinating listen. So probably not for kids, actually. Worth
Yep.
that warning. You said you should listen to it. Yeah, not with your kids. So,
Yeah. But now the
um,
story is done, so you can bring the kids back in, or you can listen to the podcast now with kids around. Fair?
let's talk about us being the most devout group. Let's go there for a minute. I like
It
being the devoutest group. We're so devout.
was not a shocking result of this research that was done by Pew Research Center, but it was thorough. So there's that. I thought, yeah, I would expect no less from our church and how we put an emphasis on scripture study and, praying or reading scriptures with your children. They have all sorts of graphic numbers in this story.
Hmm.
And sending your children to Sunday school or, at least doing one of these daily, weekly, seldom, never. And we knock it out of the park. So that's
Yeah,
all
we
I
do
can.
the things.
Yep.
The thing that so if you obviously don't live in Utah, living in Texas. I mean,
Yep.
this was like radio and TV news here, and
Oh, yeah.
the big thing here was that like the youngest group, so the 18 and 24-year-olds that were in this particular study, that there was not any it was not a lesser number.
Hmm.
And it stayed constant or increased, I think, even as well. And so people were saying, oh, hey, yeah, everybody's leaving the church and the younger generation, and it's panic and all of these things. At least this study bears out that it's like, no, actually, the youngest that can be, sort of Pew Research, the 18 to 24-year-olds have said, hey, we're staying around in the same amount of numbers as we were before. So maybe some of the actions about transparency, being able to teach better church history, being able to talk about navigating faith crises, having difficult conversations, maybe some of those things are happening and having beneficial, um, things that come from it. I don't know.
Yeah. Where I see potentially the disillusion in the church happening is more in the 30s and 40-year-old,
Sure.
when it becomes a little bit. I think I've seen a lot of people that they are doing it for the kids, and then the kids are grown and gone, and they just kind of say, well, thanks for the help, church, and raising my
Hmm.
kids. And now
Hmm.
we're going to go do something that requires a lot less of us, and we'll come back in a couple of years. So this did not, and I don't think that's a focus of any research group. Like, what are the 30 and 40 and 50-year-olds doing
Sure.
with the religion? Nobody cares about that age group. And so,
No
I
one
mean,
cares.
they care if you have kids, right? Because clearly they had a whole thing like if you have somebody living under 18 in your home.
Hmm.
But I would be interested to see the numbers of that older group where I feel like, well, I'm not a young single adult, but I'm also not like in the golden years of being a temple worker.
Hmm.
So like I show up and it's the same thing, and I don't really feel, you know what I mean? That's where I feel like some disillusionment comes from church interaction.
Interesting question that I would like to posit to you. Your husband is a true believing Mormon person, and you do not believe it, but you continue to go. Are you being inauthentic? Are you? I mean, your kids. Your husband has said to you, "Hey, I believe. I'm aware. You do not believe. I want you." Just so everyone knows, this is a fictitious situation. This is not the position that Chow's in. But I have been fascinated by the amount of people who have pulled me aside and have said, "Oh yeah, no, I don't believe anymore. I
Yeah.
I am here because I want to be here with the kids, or these are all my friends. I don't
Hmm.
believe this at all. It's easier on our household and our relationship if I just go and do it." And there's part of me that I think, man, a tremendous sacrifice on your behalf if you don't believe the principles that are being taught to be there and then be quiet about it. Like that's a sacrifice. But I also think that it's like there's a certain amount of like authenticity that even if you're not saying anything about it, I feel like people know, your heart, even if you don't say like on my heart is this, like people can tell if you're buying into a thing, if you're actively believing, if you're all that. So my question to you remains, true believing husband, you are out, would you go? Or would you be like, listen, everybody has choices, kids. We have agency. Dad will take you to church if you'd like to go. Mom is not going to go.
I, if I were in that position, I probably would not still go
Hmm.
because and I think especially as a mom, I only have so much time in the day to do a lot of things that I want to do.
Hmm.
And not saying that my husband doesn't do those kind of executive functioning things, but I have a to-do list and it never stops and I know it doesn't stop. And
Hmm.
so if my heart's not in it, then I'm doing some laundry and some freezer meals and I am moving on with the program of keeping things flowing in life. So
Hmm.
I don't think that's me. Now, if that's not me, but that is my friend,
Hmm.
I hope they still come. I
Hmm.
hope that they still show up because what I don't want to see our church get to is say, well, if you don't believe, then don't show up. You don't
Right.
have a place here. I want it to be like, that's fine. I am okay with that. Whatever level you bring to church, bring that level to church.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad that you're here and that you find some sort of value in this. But please come because, that's the only way you're going to feel the spirit. You're not going to feel the spirit doing laundry and making freezer meals like what I would be doing if I wasn't at church.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know.
That at least in one of the instances, I was like, hey, just come so I can see you because I know
Yeah.
I'm not going to be seeing you in any other way. So selfish for me, come so we can hang out and I can find out
Yeah.
how you're doing. And so it's like, but
Yeah.
I always wonder what it would, that attendance and just being like, boy, this is because I've heard the stories, right? People that just come in super judgmental. It doesn't do them good. It doesn't do people in the
Mhm.
ward any good because there's the constant contention of things or all of that. Like they're more open mouthed about it, but they continue to attend.
Yeah.
And I don't believe it, or hey, a challenge about that would be this. It's hard.
Well, and I think every congregation or ward is different, right? And the one we're in right now is really like, we're just glad you came. We don't
Right.
care. They don't, it's not that they don't care about your backstory, but they're not going to say, well, you can't be here because of
Hmm.
your backstory. They're just like, hey, you showed up and I'm thrilled to have you.
Yeah.
And they also don't put a bunch of pressure. I feel like I've never felt pressured to be like, you got to sign up for this thing and this thing and this thing. They're really like, thanks for being here. If you want to sign up, great. If you don't,
Yeah.
thanks for being here. You know what I mean? I would hope that that's the attitude in a lot of our wards. And I don't know. Well, I can't predict though, because it's a worldwide church. So,
Right. Right. Definitely, there are some places where it feels like you have to meet the bar of where the ward is at. And
mhm.
because we are taught, and it's even in the handbook, that it's like you go to church where your geographical boundaries dictate unless special permission is given. It's like, so is this going to change or am I going to be gone until this changes? Or
Yeah.
how do I
Yep.
navigate this? Because I can't do this way or I don't agree with this. That's a difficult part of it. The timing of church has never been an issue for me before until this year. And
Hmm.
because a lot of times I'll work in the afternoon on Sunday,
Hmm.
I have late church. And so when I found out that we weren't moving, we normally would vacillate between 9 in the morning and 10:30 in the morning, and then go back 9 and then 10:30, whatever, right? But because we added another congregation to our building, and normally they would stay late, be the late ward all of the time, they said, no, we want the early ward too. So now it's a three ward
Yeah.
rotation. We're in the late afternoon, and I messaged the bishop and I said, hey, you know what? I've already committed to so many things. I'll see you in 26. And he's
Yeah.
like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'll go to the other ward. I go in the morning, and I have friends now in the other ward and am able to visit with them. But
Yeah. That,
I wish that it weren't that way. I wish that it could be the same time. I've never felt that before, but it's like, let my ward be heretofore and always. Even if it's 11, then I can plan for the rest of my life the 11 a.m. ward or the 9
yeah.
a.m. ward or the 1 p.m. even. I don't love that. But the 1 p.m. ward, I know these are Utah problems, Idaho
Yeah.
problems, but to be able to have the one ward, the one time, always and forever, I've never had that issue before. And this year I'm like, well, see you guys in 26.
Well, that was my question is, are you just going to go to a different ward? And it sounds like you are
Yeah,
still going. But I think that that's something, and maybe your bishop will be able to tell you come September, hey, Richie, if you're planning your work for 2026, this is going to be our time. Because I think
right,
that that conversation happens in September. I just don't think they let members know until it's like December.
right.
So, because I imagine you're not the only member with this issue. I think of doctors, right, or
Sure.
nurses that are making their schedules. But that should be something, at least now that he's aware of that problem, my hope is would be that he would say, and maybe he wouldn't be like, well, we got to meet at 9 because otherwise Richie doesn't come.
Yeah, no,
We gotta do
I don't anticipate that at all. It
but
would be
he
nice though. Wouldn't that
hey,
be great?
wouldn't it be great? Yeah. Well, hopefully he's like, hey, I just want to let you know if you're planning your work for 2026, this is our time slot.
Yeah,
And that to me that would be ministering to the one, you
right.
know?
And all the
So,
people that want to take me to task for working on Sundays, contact theculturalhall.com. Bring it. Bring it on.
well, yeah, or go read President Nelson's talk about Sabbath day worship and what that means, and and go to the store and buy yourself some Oreos and see if you feel like you're walking into the temple with muddy shoes on.
Yeah, yeah, and with a piece of chewed gum in your mouth.
Yeah,
Go on and
right.
do that.
Welcome to the club of imperfection. Turns out you need the atonement too.
Oh, boom, need the atonement too. Funny,
All
funny,
right,
and
so
also not that funny as well.
let's
Sadly.
let's talk about Malaysia. And there was I so for me there are two stories a little bit related. There's this
Okay.
Malaysia story, right, where
Mhm.
some church missionaries were accused of proselyting. They're not supposed to proselyte to Muslims, and they were specifically at this housing project.
Hmm.
And they
Like the projects is what I assume this place is like. It's like pretty dense living, uh,
yeah,
maybe not run down necessarily like we project in projects. That's a fun way to say project in the same sentence two
yeah,
different ways. But like
project.
it's a densely populated thing, and they have said, hey, you can't proselyte
Yeah.
here.
It's illegal. It's against the
Yeah,
law. So, but they deny that they were proselyting. No, we're just helping out. We're just doing something. So, of course, you get into that Joseph Smith quote, like, well, this is our testimony, right?
right,
You remember
right.
that church video? He's like chopping the wood, and the lady's like, I don't believe your religion. He's like, this is our religion, chopping the
Hmm.
wood. I don't know why that's his voice, but
Yeah,
not
that's
how
a great
Joseph Smith talks.
impression. Spot on. I
This is
thought,
our
wait a minute.
religion. Is that Joseph Smith? Did
Yeah,
he take over?
I literally thought for a minute that I was living like what Brigham Young
Yeah.
and Joseph Smith did when you started doing the voice of Joseph Smith. Incredible,
Yeah. Oh, he's
incredible.
here. He's
Yeah,
here.
is that him?
So, yeah. But then the other story that I feel like relates to this is the story about the church giving out the Quran.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? That I think I can't remember how many thousands of
7,000
probably
Korans.
7,000. And so the two stories are not in the same article together, but to me are related in that we're saying like, look, we're respecting your boundaries and your laws. We're not proselyting. We're just trying to help. And then you have this example of literally encouraging people to read their religious texts and making it available to them. So I related those two. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing to me on a few levels. One, I didn't know that in Malaysia or really anywhere, like I guess when I think about like the hard, fast rules about like proselyting to, like I know that Holocaust victims' names in the temple is a big no-no. And we've
Yep.
done it a few times, but now we're like, no, but seriously, we're not doing it anymore. And there have been some that I'm sure have fallen through the cracks, but it's occurred, right? And some people sought those individuals out and horribly inappropriate. And we can talk about that. That's a discussion for a different time. But I think as far as anything like that goes, unless it was like a mission rule, like in Russia, you're called volunteers and you're not allowed to proselyte at all. Or like my grandparents served their mission in Vietnam and they
Mhm.
weren't allowed to proselyte at all. It's interesting to me that like you could have missionaries in a country, Malaysia, and it's like, hi, my name is Elder Stedman. I'm from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Are you Muslim? Yes, I am. Have a good day.
Mhm. Yep. And that's
So
it.
I just didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that it was like, oh, you're Muslim. Okay, well, we appreciate the time. And from the church's aspect, they're like, we know that no one did it. And what I unfortunately think is a little disingenuous is it's like that this is undoubtedly two 19-year-olds that felt, the spirit of Elijah or something that were
Hmm.
like, no, we must go and do. And undoubtedly, two dumb 19-year-old kids started talking, started proselyting, did something that they were well intentioned. They weren't being
Hmm.
malicious. They thought that it was their calling, their time. They could be unique. They could be different. They felt prompted, all of these things. And it was the wrong person to be sharing the message with.
Yeah.
But the article shares nothing like the church thinks that maybe something could have happened by mistake. It's like, absolutely not. It's like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Well, I'm I know that when you get called to those countries, you have a different standard. And I don't know if you knew this, and I don't know if it's still around, but when I served my mission in 2005, I there was a story in the church news about how the sister missionaries in India
Hmm.
actually do have a uniform that they would wear. It was like a navy blue skirt, white button-down blouse, and a like blue blazer. They all had to wear the same outfit. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yes, in India because they wanted to be sure that they were easily identified as sister missionaries.
Hmm.
They weren't mistaken for tourists or people just traveling the country. So I think when you go to those countries, um, it's different and you know the standard. It's not the same as a missionary serving in the United States that maybe feels a little more flexible about the
Yeah.
rules. I think you really understand this is a no-no and it's a hard stop, and your disobedience will literally affect the church's ability to continue to have missionaries in this country.
Yeah.
And so I think yeah, I that to me plays a factor in it.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine because we live in a country that religious freedom has always been part of our existence here.
Hmm.
But there is, and it's a society disruptor to have people switch faiths, to have that kind of change happen. So I try to put my hat on of the government, and you don't want that. Like you've got so many people you're managing, you're keeping control, and you're trying to keep social order, and then to have this pop up and change happen, I can see um the principle behind the law,
Hmm.
right? So I think that they didn't do it, but at the same time, it's a good story to publish and kind of reinforce, let's not do it. Like, let's
Yeah.
not bridge this at all. So, but the story about the
The Korans.
7,000 Qurans,
Hold
yep.
on, though. Before we get to that, let me
Oh,
just say
sorry.
when you were going to give me an example, I know you served your mission in Hawaii, and I was like, where is she going with this example? Because she served in the United States. I
I
wonder
know.
where she was. And then, of course, that the story from India. But I was like, maybe I'm wrong, but Hawaii has always been, since she's been alive,
Yes.
one of these United States. So whatever
Yep.
she's about to, oh, India.
So, and I'll give you a little bit more of a backstory, which is not gonna, again, I need the atonement as much as anybody else. I recently watched the show Vikings, which is not I it's not appropriate. Let
Yeah.
me just say that. It is told from the opinion of the pagan Vikings going out killing Christians. There's a lot of fluidity with the law of chastity or sexuality or a lot of weird stuff going on
Hmm.
in that show, but it's fairly historically accurate. But what helped me understand was just how offensive it was to have a Christian missionary come to their land and
Oh,
just
wow.
they were not tall. And granted, this is way back in like 1080 or something. It was forever ago, but just the intolerance that they had because they saw it as a threat.
Mm.
And I appreciated the show for that, for kind of helping me see that perspective of no, if you're a Christian missionary and you show up here, we're taking you out. We can't tolerate it. And if you stick with the show, it's like 6 or 7 episode seasons. Sorry,
Mm.
not episode seasons. In the end, you kind of see how Christianity is just taken over the world.
Mm.
Like by the time you get to the end of the show, the old ways, these pagan gods are kind of being left aside, and Christ is becoming the religion. Christianity is becoming the religion, whether they like it or not. They can't really stop it.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't know.
So
So
for those that would come at Chow for watching that show, know that she was taking it as a Christian exploration. That is
yes,
why she watched it.
it
It
was it
wasn't
was
all of the other
it was a theology educational purpose.
Yes. Yes.
It was
And
not because the main character was cute.
no. Nope. Nope. And shredded, I'm sure.
Yep.
When
Yes,
I
he
think
was.
Viking, I think lots of
Yep.
muscles and no shirt.
Yep.
Good for you.
Yep.
All
Ragnar
right,
Lothbrok. Woo. So, okay. So,
talk to me about the Quran.
all right. So this was in, and I'm not going to say this right, Aseth province, Asik, Aceh, for those that are spelling at home and know how to speak foreign languages. It's an area that was devastated by tsunamis in 2004. And these were 7,000 copies of the Quran were given to the Muslim brothers in the Aceh province. And I believe that's in Indonesia, but I've got to scroll up in the story to see where it's at. I'm not sure where it's at, but it's in that province. What I liked in this story was the quote from Sheikh Youssef, who I believe is the man who received these. And he said that, there's a belief that the light of God is refracted through the prism of intellect. If it is not refracted through that prism, it blinds, it doesn't guide.
Hmm.
And then Elder Corbett added that refraction is facilitated, in my opinion and experience, most powerfully and clearly and effectively through service, through actions. And so they sent this around, and he says, and this is sort of a shared quote between Elder Corbett. Elder Corbett says, this has nothing to do with proselyting. It has to do with ... And he kind of trails off, and Sheikh Youssef answers, an act of goodwill.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, being able to share, because here's the thing, helping people in their faith. I love that. The fact that we're giving out these Qurans to people to learn more of their faith, to be able to read more, to be. It is a part of Mormonism that baffles me on occasion where we get super worried about, like, oh, that's anti or it's whatever. Because if it's truth, then truth will be truth and is always truth. And so
mhm.
people can be able to read or pray or study or any of these kind of things. And if it's truth, then the truth will continue to be
Yeah.
truth. It's not subjective truth. It's not, oh, but if you don't do any of this and if you find any of that, then it's true. If you don't do, I mean, I recognize that there are things that make it harder maybe to recognize the spirit, to be able to have the Holy Ghost in your life and be able to help you feel the truthfulness of things, that kind of stuff. Okay, a case can be made for that, but truth is truth.
Hmm.
And so if I can read something that is false, I can go, oh, that is false. That is not true. Or if I wrestle with it, I can go, that doesn't seem quite right. That seems counter to the truth of what this is. What is this thing? How do I do it? And then when I come around and go, that thing in the gospel is truth, then I don't ever, or
Hmm.
likely ever sway away from it because I've wrestled with it. I've built the muscle around it and I go, truth. And it's truth because
Yeah.
of this, as
Yep.
opposed to, I think it is, but I better not do any, I'm not sure. Truth, it exists and we should know about it.
Well, and I just want good people in the world, right?
Yes.
If this helps you become a good person, to live up to your commitments to your family, to be honest in your interactions with other people, to have empathy for other people, share it.
Yep.
That is good. I want good people living in this world with my children more than people who are prideful and feel like this is mine, I'm entitled,
Yeah.
and you know, that attitude. Okay, where are we going next?
I
So,
think we're to our last story, if you can believe it. The time is now up. We're going to talk about inclusivity at church. You had mentioned that this was important, and I want to give you the opportunity to say why it would be important. We did a great episode. I'll find the number and include it in the show notes where we talked about some of the different things that in the more recent years have been coming about. Things like for the hearing and vision impaired. Um, Things like we have in the last 20 years like wheelchair access and some of these other things, but just being like, when you think about like autism and loud things and all of the things that we're trying to be considerate and being aware of everyone and saying everyone, visitors welcome, all people welcome within the church. And there was an article about how to be inclusive.
yeah, and I'm always sort of contemplating religious things, but I had wondered, have you ever seen a bishop that was in a wheelchair?
Interesting.
Have you?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. But I think if I remember correctly, it was when I was growing up. He when he started as bishop, he was not in a wheelchair.
Oh.
something happened. It wasn't like a car accident, but something health-wise happened,
Mm-hmm.
and they put in an elevator up to the pew,
Oh.
and then he was able to still continue to be the bishop because he was beloved, 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 beloved. But he wasn't always, and my young brain couldn't wrap around where it was like, wait, he used to be able to walk, but now he doesn't walk anymore. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's something that I think about and I wonder about because as an attorney, we often, a lot of people don't see inclusivity in the legal profession, but I, my law school I attended, Baylor Law School, we had a student who had a severe, I want to say it was like a muscular dystrophy, used a wheelchair that she could only really use one hand, had a service dog the whole time. The service dog graduated from law school with her.
Hmm.
He also got a law degree from Baylor University. And I see a lot of attorneys that they show up and they are on crutches or they're in wheelchairs or they have that, right?
Mhm.
But they're still, to me, leaders in our legal community. And I wonder how often do we see that reflected in church leadership? And I hope that it becomes more common because I haven't really seen that ever. So, but this article is about how to help children with disabilities at church.
Hmm.
And it talks about what we can do to make this better. And my daughter is in young women's and she's pretty young. So this is kind of a new world. And they're having some they had a bunch of new girls come in, and there's a little bit of a rift in figuring out how to balance things. And ultimately, it comes down to some of the new kids have a bit of disability, some sensory issues, some emotional processing issues. And what I'm impressed with, she's the president in her class, and she's working to have an activity where they can understand what they can do better and be more inclusive. And
Hmm.
at a young age to be able to do that, I think is wonderful because you people don't understand why, and they say, well, you can't do that. Stop doing that or quit this. And so I love that the church is saying, communication is crucial, understanding is essential, respectful inclusion is the key, education is important, support and engagement is vital. Challenge exists, but you got to make an effort. And
Mhm.
so this really is a beautiful article, and there's a nice story about um, a World War II story from, I think it's from Elder Uchtdorf. He talks about some inclusion and what could be done. And I really appreciate this coming out, especially at this time when I know my daughter is grappling with what she can do to
Mhm.
make sure that there's inclusivity at
Yeah.
church.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a thing, and I appreciate those that I have known have um that have things to be aware of. I don't know how to even delicately say that, right? Like that's a perfect example of how I show up. Like I want to be so loving and inclusive, and I feel like I trip over myself every chance I can. But the
Mhm.
people in my life that have some sort of disability, the fact that I've been able to come to them and be like, "Hey, I don't understand why you're in a wheelchair," and I almost even say it that way, right?
Yeah,
I don't understand this. Can you help me? And the way that they're willing to be like, okay, so this thing with my muscles and this, and I'm like, okay, like, are you all right? Like, are you ever going to be out of the wheelchair? No, I'm not ever. Okay. Like they allow me the space to be able to ask questions and be able to visit with them because they can tell that I care about them and that I want to know about them. But the gift that they have given me about being able to trip over myself has been so great because they'll just be like, "No, you idiot. that that is not a thing. Let's not say it that way," or a better way to be able to say it. And I think that's where I would
Mhm.
hope in my heart of hearts, I would hope that the reason why we're so bad at it is because we don't want to offend people and not just because we're so ignorant, right? Like oh, I just want to make sure I do this right. And in an effort to do it right, we don't do anything. And that's why we're
Yeah,
exclusive as opposed to, well, they're not like us. We don't,
yeah.
I hope we can do that. But having a frank conversation with kids, and I don't know why I feel so passionately about this all of a sudden, but I was hearing a conversation about It was a kid that was blind, and the boy in the class was asking his dad, and the dad was like, "Oh yeah, so when he was born, he wasn't able to see, but I guess this kid's eyes are open, so you can see that he has eyes, but it maybe looks a little weird to the kid." And so the dad explains it to his son, and the son's like, "Oh, okay." And then that was it. And he didn't care anymore. And he was like, "Yeah, come play. We'd love to have you play." But we
Yeah.
get so worried on behalf of other people, and we get so, kind
Yep.
of wrapped up in anything. It's
One
just
of
need to
my
be better.
favorite books I ever read about this, it's Option, or I think it's called Option B or Plan B by Sheryl Sandberg. And she worked at Facebook. She was like the highest female um employee at Facebook years ago.
Hmm.
And her husband created SurveyMonkey.
Okay.
They were on vacation in Mexico when he had a heart attack and died on a treadmill. He like didn't show up for dinner.
Oh
They
my
didn't know
gosh.
why, and turns out he had died while at the gym. And so she talks about like, hey, this was never our plan. We had young kids. This was not our
Right.
plan. And she talks about how people would just ignore it, right? They didn't want to make her uncomfortable, so they just would not talk about it. And she's like, hey, I hated it. It's like he didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I've taken that to be a little more tactful and try to say like, when was your anniversary? Tell me how you guys met. I don't mean to pry, but I want you to know, like, this is my way of saying like that he lived. He's part of your story.
Hmm.
And I try to do that and again, I think there's some tactful way you can do it. Or sometimes if you feel like you're being not tactful, you can say, I'm so sorry that this is not like I'm awkward with my words, but my heart is in the right place where I want to understand and I want to make this a place that you love and that you feel comfortable. And so I think as long as you're able to sincerely say that, it can really help people understand, what are you trying to do? What that you want them to feel included
Yeah.
and have a place there. So,
Yeah. Well said. Boy, this episode started in a whole different place, but I'm glad it
yeah.
ended there. Oof.
Hey, can we just briefly give a shout out to the most amazing Relief Society member in New Orleans, Cynthia Van Dam?
Sure.
Passed away. This is another story. We'll just briefly say she was a member of the church. She was a former English teacher, an amateur genealogist, and she had a passion for civil rights and justice. Like, man, I have missed living on this earth. I missed meeting this Cindy Van Dam. She was killed in a hit and run, but there's a beautiful news story about her married for 45 years, member of the church, and just lived the gospel well. And I was so inspired by that story. So I just got to give a shout out to Cindy Van Dam. And I hope she's on the other side with my dad, like, changing things, making stuff happen.
And
So,
because I'm horribly immature, I'm going to say shout out to Cindy and also the whole Van Dam family.
oh, yep. Yep. But I mean, what a legacy for those
Yes,
left behind. I just think, man, she was the coolest. If we gave a Relief Society Sister of the Year award, I'm voting for her. Be like,
done,
she deserved it.
done.
So, okay,
All
make it
right.
happen.
Well, that does it for us. Man, we talked about all sorts of things. I'm glad to be able to catch up with my friend Chow Mein. Chow
Yeah.
Mein, Camplain Charmaine.
Chow mein noodles. That's what you're
Chow
gonna
Mein
call me.
noodles. What did I say this episode was going to be called? Now I got to go back and listen.
Uh,
From the very beginning.
man, it was
And it was
funny.
brilliant too. That's what this episode will be called. And we hope that it has nourished and strengthened your body.
And that if you're not healthy enough to listen this week, that you'll be able to listen next week.
And that when the time comes, you'll be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, Chris at Alpine Lakes Travel, Debbie Wanless, Chocolate Cake Bites Podcast, and the Tiger with a U will be saving a seat for you
On the back row
of
of
the
the
Cultural
Cultural
Hall.
Hall.
Save me a seat, it's sure to be neat on the back row. We really